Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's guest is not just on audio, but also video. So if you guys want to watch this episode, go over to YouTube, celestial_fit, and you can see us connecting face to face and join the conversation with us there. However, let's get into it. This athlete is from the UK, and she recently won her pro card at the Ben Weider in April this year, and then she placed fourth at her pro debut during the One Pro Show, literally in the same day. And she started her journey back in 2015, really grew up in this sport, and has since become a full-time posing coach in her business, Rockit Posing. Awesome name. If you've seen her pose it, you would say she's rocking it. And she also earned her bachelor's degree in Biomedical Science from the University of Liverpool, which I'm super curious about. And we will be talking about her journey just over these last almost a decade. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming this athlete. Welcome to the show, Marnie Al-Saraf. How are you doing?
What an intro. I'm like, damn, that was me.
Yeah. That's okay.
Thanks so much for having me on, Celeste. And obviously we were chatting just before we started recording. I have listened to this podcast for the longest time, probably since you started. So honestly, this is a pinch me moment. I've said that so many times this year, but the opportunities that I've had since turning pro, it has literally blown my mind. And you know, all those years ago, listening to the podcast and thinking, wow, one day maybe I can be on there as a guest. And now I'm here.
Here we are. Welcome.
Yes.
No, I'm so happy. Like, I know, now we're cheesing for the podcast because it's true, but we were cheesing hard, you guys, before. Like, Marnie's just so genuine, and I was looking forward to this episode, but it is special when I get to connect with an athlete and they're what you expect and even better. And it's awesome to hear that you've been listening for so long, and it makes me happy because I know there's other people who have been listening as long as you, or who just started listening and they're like, I want to get on this podcast too. And I had someone at a show one time, it was at North Americans, and then it's come up a few times since then, but they'll tell me like it's on their vision board. Like it's not just become a bikini pro, it's become a bikini pro and go on this podcast. And when people tell me that, I'm like, I just started it thinking it would be nice to learn if they struggle the same way and have success leaves clues, but it's just taken me on a unique journey too. So I'm excited to shine this light on you. And, I got to ask if there's anything you do or think about or a ritual you have before your heel hits the stage.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess right before getting on stage for me, it is just remembering and reflecting on all the work that has gone in to get to that moment, because as we all know, it is a lot. And, I try not to put too much pressure on myself and enjoy the moment. I think as I've progressed and grown up in the sport, that ritual that you talk about has probably changed a lot. And, maybe I sort of had self-doubt in the past and things like that. But as I've grown up and as I've matured, I've realized like, we're so passionate about what we do and the process, and like getting on that stage is just a celebration, and it's a moment in time of your journey. And I say this to a lot of my clients, actually, Celeste, like each show that we do is a stepping stone in our journey. It's never like necessarily the end, if that makes sense, and it shouldn't be seen that way. So yeah, for me, it's about enjoying the moment, trying to be as present as I can be, and that's something that I would say I'm still working on now. So yeah.
I really like that, the stepping stone piece, because especially when you've been in it for so long, you can look back on your journey and be like, had I not experienced this or gone through that, I wouldn't be here as the athlete I am in this present moment.
Totally agree. And since turning pro as well, obviously, like that is such a huge goal for so many people in the sport, and I'm sure so many of the listeners. And yeah, I just think that in itself is an amazing accomplishment. But all of that aside, the actual title or the status or whatever, the best part about that journey is who you have to become in order for it to happen. And that is probably one of the biggest things that I've actually realized. I kind of had the epiphany since April, now that the dust has settled somewhat. I say the dust has settled, but like here we are, like I'm on this podcast now. But I guess since that big moment this year, like I've started to reflect on, like you say, like the last decade, and it's just, I'm not the same person now than I was when I first stepped into bodybuilding. So yeah.
Man, I'm so excited to hear more about what's happened since going pro, because oftentimes, you know, there's multiple perspectives on this, but like one, you become an IFBB pro, and unfortunately there's no gold platter that falls from the sky and changes your life. However, there are oftentimes opportunities or changes or connections that can come from that. And it does maybe give a different platform, especially when you are running a business that's related to bodybuilding as you are, and you're able to contribute in that way, or maybe you're sponsored or you're pursuing those types of opportunities. So I do want to hear about what happened, but let's go back to Marnie, who started in this journey and was completely different. So this is what I understand so far. You were 18, you finished school with the intention of going into medicine. After you moved to London to go to university, you walked away, went back to your parents' house, and you put your energy into the gym as a form of an escape and therapy, focusing on something else to bring you purpose. But you didn't know much about working out, so you hired a personal trainer. You found the gym to be a worthy use of your time and started to really enjoy it. And then you know, Instagram back then wasn't there was a market for it. You got shreds, right? And you got your things.
Oh my God, throw back.
Yeah. So you see that. And then you also start seeing, when you follow that, then you start seeing, oh, there's like Ashley Kaltwasser, there's your India Paulinos, there's the OGs. So after seeing Ashley Kaltwasser, that was what you had mentioned in another episode of an episode of a different podcast. You said that kind of triggered something in you. You wanted that. So how did you go from being someone who knew nothing about training and nutrition to being fully dedicated to your bodybuilding goals?
Wow. Okay. So from that moment onwards, like I say, when, you know, like you described, wanting to have that interest in bodybuilding, wanting to pursue it. And I was curious and I was like, wow, okay, I have no idea what this is, but it looks cool and I'm going to try it. So at that point, again, like trying to use Instagram as a resource to try and search through the hashtags, like hashtag bikini competitor, hashtag bikini athlete, like finding that, trying to find a coach. And there was actually a coach that was based in Liverpool, funnily enough. And I worked with this coach and I literally jumped on stage after just 4 months of training. And I say that in inverted commas because it wasn't real training. I didn't know how to train to failure. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know anything about macros, Celeste. Like I was so clueless, like you say. So I kind of went into that first prep blindly, and I came third out of 10 girls in the class. It was back then, it was junior bikini. So I was only young. I was only 18, 19 years old. And, you know, I didn't have muscle density or maturity or anything like that. And I think, again, back then, you'll know this as well, like bikini division was just so different. Like, yes, we needed muscle, but the winners of the Bikini Olympia back then would not win the Olympia now, put it that way.
Let
like
alone their pro card. They
exactly, even the pro card. Yeah, it's crazy. Like the divisions evolved so much. So I did well. And to be honest, I was so shocked that I actually placed at that show and that I was actually in the mix. So I kind of came away from that and I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to win. For me, it was like, I want to see if I can actually do this and I can actually get on stage and look like a bikini competitor, like from the photos that I'd seen of the Olympia and stuff. And I guess like I ticked that goal off, but I realized like, wow, you've actually got a lot of determination and resilience, and the process kind of shaped me into someone who has those qualities, I suppose, that I didn't realize I had within myself. So yeah, from that moment on, it started like a cascade of me doing shows in the UK. For the listeners that aren't aware of like bodybuilding in the UK back then, we didn't actually have NPC worldwide back then. There was no Two Bros Pro events. There was, the IFBB. It was more so like in the US, I think, than the UK. And the route to actually obtaining a pro card back then was basically impossible. They handed out like one pro card a year, maybe, if you were lucky. And my physique was nowhere near being able to be awarded that at that point. So for me, I suppose it was more so like I actually enjoyed the process of like, dieting down for stage, and I knew nothing about off seasons either. Like, again, I think for me, I almost viewed it as like a challenge of like a dieting competition back then, and I was so just like unaware of actual bodybuilding. And I think, again, like the information that we have online now, it really shows the importance of that, taking the time away from the stage and actually eating to fuel your training sessions. And obviously all of that now I know, and I, live my life that way as a pro. But yeah, back then things were so different. So I've gone on a tangent here, but yeah, like I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
No, that was really great. It's so true. Like you gave a really good summary of how things have changed since then. And it almost brings me back to like being the young 18-year-old looking at well, for us, there was a NPC magazine.
Okay.
So I would get those, or like looking online and being like, oh, I want to do that. The energy felt different. There was something different, like, but then you get into it, right? And now you're part of it. You're exuding that energy. You're becoming that. You're embodying what you believe is required to be your best. And at the time, you saw that as like, it's a dieting competition, not so much like the posing and the exactitudes of training and developing a physique that meets the criteria, and then let alone that the NPC worldwide wasn't even in existence. So you weren't necessarily under the same standards or opportunities, even still, because in America, it's just so much, there is more opportunity to go pro than overseas. So it's different. So now, you progressed, you had to learn so much about yourself. Like you said before, everything was a stepping stone. So when you started, it was a bit of like therapy, and it was a bit of a relief. It had to bring something to your life to go as hard as you did for as long as you have, and to want to continue to do that. So what did it bring to your life and you personally that you maybe didn't experience before, but that made you want to keep going and commit to it?
Wow, that's a deep question. Oh my God. In true Celeste fashion. That's a really good question, because I will say this: throughout my amateur competitive journey, I'd say from about 2015, like, yeah, I came third at the first show, whatever. 2016, I won my first ever show, actually, and it was a very big show. It was the English Grand Prix, and there was a few athletes who competed in that show who actually then went on to turn pro as well, like in the UK, a couple of years later. So it was a big show, and I think after that show, I had so many like ups and downs in my journey where my body didn't respond to preps. And I feel like you'll relate to this, because I've been on stage when I shouldn't have been on stage in the past. Mm-hmm. And it is the worst thing ever. But I relate to a lot of what you post about stuff like that, because I've been through it myself, and I do see others go through that now as well. And I feel like sometimes, well, particularly back in the day, there wasn't enough information out there, where you almost felt like you had to keep going, especially in the UK. And I'm not sure if it was the same for you in the US scene, but amongst the bikini girls, it was always like, who's competing this year? And it was just, again, it was that dieting mentality, that diet, like sort of come out of prep, like have a terrible rebound, and then the answer to that is, let's do another prep for the following year. And obviously alongside that, as you mentioned, I was, going to university as well. So I was juggling a degree, bodybuilding, or I say bodybuilding, but being a competitor. And like I say, it wasn't always down, down, down. It was like ups and downs, trying to find the right coach. Like, what show should I do? Should I not compete? Like, and all the while, the industry's evolving as this is happening as well. So like the physiques are starting to get better, and then new people are coming out of the woodworks and they're competing against you. And like, yeah, what a journey it was. Again, I've completely lost track of what question you asked me, but
I think you're right on track and you're doing a great job. And honestly, like what you just said about going through that phase of it's up, and then all of a sudden I rebound and now I got to get back into it, and relying on prep and seeing everybody else continuing to compete. I even see that now, I think, where there's a bit of that pressure of like, oh, well, this person's now competed in back to back shows and years and they're still going. But at least now there's a more emphasis on the importance of an improvement season and taking the time to grow. And you have definitely done that for yourself. Like you mentioned recently that you learned that you need to have the time to grow, and you've realized that it's actually very beneficial. But through those ups and downs in your journey, did you have times where you felt like, I may never compete again, I don't even think I want to continue?
Yeah, 100%. And it's so funny because it was like right before I started the prep that I just did to win my pro card, which is just, I mean, imagine if I'd given up. So if anyone's listening that's at that point, you might just be on the verge of something great. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I've been there, and those words have never left my mouth, Celeste, until last year in 2022. And again, to be honest, it wasn't off the back of like a terrible prep or anything like that. Actually in 2021 I competed and I won my first ever regional overall, and that was a huge deal for me as well. And it was actually the biggest regional of the year in the UK because it was right before the UK Arnold, so it was like the last chance to get that, yeah, you've done your regional, because that's the rule in the UK. You have to have done a regional show in order to do like a pro qualifier. And yeah, I remember being at that show, and the prep itself was a long prep, but towards the back end of that, I lost a grandparent and my mental headspace wasn't great. And I think, yeah, at that time, the coach that I was working with was, everybody's coaching style is different, but this coach was very like tough love, like doesn't ever give compliments, and almost I felt like I might be behind schedule, and you know, I just wasn't 100%. And I remember I went for an in-person check-in at 2 weeks out from that show, from the regional overall win, and I was told like, yeah, you look about 5 weeks out, but like we are where we are now. And I was just a bit like, you what? And
you're okay with that, coach? Like you're cool with this?
I was honestly, the whole drive home from that meeting, I was just like, not doing the show, like that's it, I'm pulling out, whatever. And you know, I'm very grateful that I have some great friends in my circle, and they were like, no, you've got to do this for you. Like, it's not to prove anyone wrong. This is like, you know, you've seen the prep through, and like you've been through so much over the last few weeks that like you can't get to show day and not do it. But again, I think like the younger Marnie was almost reverting back to that don't get on stage if you're not ready sort of mindset. So it was almost triggering for that maybe. Yeah. Anyway, I went to the show and the lighting was so bad backstage that like someone took a photo of me and I was like, I don't look 5 weeks out, I look 20 weeks out. Like the light so bad. You know that, you know where like lighting is important when you're in prep, because if you catch yourself in the wrong light and your mind can just play tricks on you so bad.
Same with good lighting.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. But yeah, one of my best friends was at the show, and I had a bit of a moment backstage. I was like, I'm not getting on stage. And she was like, pull yourself together. You've worked so hard for this. You can outpose everyone else. She was like, your posing is it, your personality will come across. And then, yeah, like straight away when I got into the overall, I remember being backstage before that overall, and I was watching the girls like walk past me who had like won all the other classes, because I was in class A, right, as an amateur. Yeah. I'm 5 foot tall. So I'm watching like the class B winner, the class C winner, D, E, F, G. And I'm like, oh my God, like these girls are so peeled. Like I'm going to be the fattest one on stage. And then as soon as I got up there, they just put me in the center and that was it, done. They were like, yeah, there's your winner. So there's so many talking points that come from that. But again, like for the listeners to relate, I've been in that position so many times with the whole comparison thing. And I think that is a perfect example of like, try not to compare yourself. Like let the judges do that, because you might think you're not enough of this, you're too much of that. But I still get told to this day, like the reason that I won that overall is because like someone was too hot, someone was too cold, and I was like perfectly in the middle, and that is bikini. So yeah.
That's such an interesting lesson. Like from a sport perspective, the lesson there is like you don't know who's going to be standing next to you, let alone how you're going to look standing next to them. And maybe there's a mental lesson in that too, of like sometimes you just have to show up, get the job done, because the stories we tell ourselves aren't always indicative of reality. And if we haven't yet achieved the result that we want, sometimes we do have to do something different or crazy or against what the way we've been thinking, like you said, against your old I'm not ready, I should just keep dieting mentality, get even smaller or leaner or tighter, whatever. But actually by putting yourself on stage, even though your mind wasn't thinking you were there and your coach at the time for whatever reason decided that'd be a good thing to tell you, you still went up there and you still did it, and you had a really great encouraging friend. And I remember you had shared that when you hired your current coach now, that your confidence was at a low point, and you weren't the same Marnie. So what have you had to do to ultimately regain the confidence that you could go after this dream and pursue it, but also not just build it back up, but actually accelerate it to become the version of yourself that won her pro card?
So do you mean like how did I build the confidence when I started working with my current coach? Is that the question? Just
like how did you rebuild it?
Honestly, it took such a long time. I think a lot of it, to be honest, the confidence for me is a lot of the time is like being in control. And I think by taking back that control of like, I get to make the decisions, I get to write the next chapter of my story, that in itself is such a powerful thing. So again, if anyone's listening that feels stuck, or like they're kind of spiraling down a hole and they're trying to clamber out of it, because that's how I felt like I was clambering out of a black hole. It was awful. I think like the first thing that you need to do is just take action, and it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be 100% the right decision, but like nothing changes if nothing changes. So for me, like I say, that ultimately came down to like, right, I need a change here. Like something's not quite aligning with where I want to be and what I want to do. And it's almost like the universe was giving me those signs. And it was a big decision for me, because the coach that I was with for like 2.5 years, all through lockdown. So like that was a big thing, because I'm such a loyal person. Like I really am. Like I stick with people, but ultimately if a situation isn't serving you, you have to have that confidence somewhere inside to walk away. And it's hard. Like it is hard. But you know, speaking to Jake, who is my current coach at the moment, and he helped me with my pro card, like I think I was gravitated towards him because I already had a friendship with him, and he was sending a lot of his clients to me for posing actually. And all the girls that he was sending to me were winning overalls in the UK. So it was like we were this dream team. He was doing the physique and I was doing the posing, and these girls were just absolutely smashing it. And it didn't actually occur to me at first. It was my boyfriend Joe that was like, I think Jake would be a great fit for you. And I hadn't even thought about it, to be honest. And sometimes all it takes is like that one suggestion from someone. And like here we are. If I hadn't made that decision, I don't think I'd be sat on this podcast today. So yeah.
What was happening that made you feel less confident as a competitor during that time compared to when you started and you were on a roll and you were doing really well, you were performing well? What was making you not feel so confident that then made you decide, like, yeah, I should probably switch coaches and take a new approach, but also rebuild this?
I really like this question. Again, I think a lot of people will relate. Weight gain, one. Number two, thinking that I have to be optimal all the time, as in like tick the boxes with like 0.01 precision. And I think it's really important for people to understand, because again, like the whole thing about social media is great. There's so much information for us out there right now, more than there ever has been. Again, probably when me and you first started in the sport, there was nowhere near the amount of, every time I go on Instagram, there's a reel of like how to do a reverse diet, how you should be training, you need to do this, that, and the other. And like, there's just going to be opinions left and right. And it's great because it's out there and you can learn. But the problem with that is you almost kind of, it's very easy to be in an echo chamber and think, oh, well, I have to do it this way. And like, you know, if you don't do it like this, you'll never turn pro. If you don't do it like this, you'll never get anywhere in bodybuilding. And it's just, I think it became so overwhelming. And like a lot of those things that I was trying to do perhaps weren't the right way for me. And so ultimately my process was making me unhappy. And like, to be honest, I feel quite vulnerable saying that, because I've never actually like openly said something like that maybe. But again, the reason I'm sharing it is because I think there'll be a lot of people that can benefit and learn, and might make them think twice about what they're doing if it doesn't make them happy. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's definitely a time and a place for being precise. For me, that's when I'm in a prep. But again, some people like to be like that all year round. And for some people, it works great, and that's how they operate best. But for me, I love having that downtime. I say downtime. Of course, I'm working my ass off, like in an off season. I want to build the tissue. I want to get to the Olympia for goodness sake. But, you know, like in a prep for me, I flick the switch, and that's what makes me tick. And again, I think it kind of comes full circle back to like when I first started in the sport, you know, being so on it and meticulous with the prep and the diet, but then maybe not knowing how to do things when I come out of the prep. And so that's why it spiraled and it put me in a bad situation. Whereas now I've had so many experiences of doing it this way, doing it that way. And only through that have I learned what actually works best for me. When people are starting out, they can feel so lost because they don't know how to do things that suits themselves. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I was in such a bad headspace. Like I say, I was almost just trying to fit things that just weren't me, maybe. Like to compare that with how I did this prep to win my pro card. One of the perfect examples that I could use that people might understand what I'm talking about here is like, I never once did fasted cardio through my entire prep to turning pro. Now, some people would be like, do or die fasted cardio. Like, you can't do cardio any other time. You have to be fasted. But I didn't do it once and I won my pro card. So, like, that's a perfect example of like, you might be told to do something for that extra 1%. But if that causes you 2% worth of stress, then you've got a net loss of 1%. So actually, you don't get the 1% from it. Do you see what I mean?
Totally love that. Yeah.
So,
Oh my goodness. Everything you're saying, I feel like you're holding up like a mirror, because I'm like, I can relate. That was
no
me.
way.
Like, I totally, like, no, for real. Like, I get that. And the key point that I want to re-announce and drive home is like doing what's best for you, your process. Also, you said earlier you're a loyal person and your discipline came out through this lifestyle too. So when you do associate success with a particular process, because that's what you're seeing, then you want to commit to that and you question if you'll be successful if you don't. And then when, you know, you do have a lot of competing ideas or opinions that are online now, you then start sometimes questioning what you are doing. The benefit of that is you learn there's other ways to get there. But the downside of it is sometimes it leads you to question what you're doing and makes you doubt if your process is one that's worthwhile and going to get you where you want to be. So the key being, know what's going to be your best process. And I like to explain to clients, like, you can do something for 12 weeks that's super strict, that looks just like this person does it online, which they're probably not even doing it. You could do exactly that. And then afterwards, you can struggle for the next 40 weeks and really rebound and then do it again. Or you can commit to something for 24 weeks that's more flexible or sustainable, feel really good, contributes to your lifestyle, not stressing you out, and then come out of that 24 weeks feeling like it wasn't such a big shift, that then post show it's actually quite easier. Most people are going to choose number 2, but when we're put in that bubble, we feel like number 1 is the best. But ultimately, we need to exist in something that we can sustain. And you also mentioned that you had to choose to do different. And then that actually created the change and led you to a better path. But there were some things that were contributing to lower confidence. And you mentioned weight gain was one of them, and not feeling like you had to be optimal all the time. But then you mentioned by not trying to do the 1% everyone talks about doing, you actually relieved a lot of the stress on yourself, which propelled you forward. I love that, because you're going to hear to wear the waist trainer, to do the extra movement, to get all these amount of steps, to breathe in this way, you're going to hear all of that. But ultimately, like, it's about what your threshold is right now as a competitor. What is your threshold for commitment that's going to challenge you enough to be better, but not so much that you don't want to continue? And then you give yourself space to actually become the athlete who can achieve what she wants, because you're not holding yourself back. And then you mentioned the weight gain. So let's talk about weight gain. You have since, from what I can see, put out the message of acceptance and excitement, knowing that you're building something better. And even recently, you talked about how you didn't expect to come out of your improvement season so quickly. And actually, this improvement season has been shorter than you thought, but you've put on more tissue. So walk us through how this improvement season has been different than past ones, and why you've come to a place of acceptance with weight gain that allows you to maybe relieve that pressure and have that confidence again.
It's definitely something that I still struggle with, but I'm getting better every year that I go through the process, I think, because I know that it's part of what we do. And I also understand that, like, this is the body that builds the body that everyone sees on stage. Yep. I'm like, this body right now is doing everything. It's building all the glute gains that we all need. So I'm like, just embrace it. Now, don't get me wrong. The way that this, again, is maybe a controversial one, but for me, when I'm training specifically, I don't want to distract myself from the task at hand. So I am that girl that's in there in the oversized tee and in the leggings, and I just get my head down. But again, I think it's because I'm not focusing on something that's going to distract me from what I need to focus my attention on. Maybe that's something that you share with your clients, is like, don't fixate on like the fact that you have no abs right now. Fixate on how strong you are. And I can do that best when I'm not looking at myself in every mirror in the gym, Right. So that's something that I do still struggle with, but like, that's how I deal with it at the moment. And maybe that will get better with time. But again, I think it's one of those things where, like, as competitors, I definitely struggle with body dysmorphia as well. And we forget that like 99% of the population would love to look like we do in off season all year round. Like, I forget that. I'm like, oh, I don't think my glutes look that round. And people will be like, are you kidding? They've definitely grown in the last 8 weeks. I'm like, oh, yeah. So yeah, one of those. But I think, yeah, the weight gain and stuff, like, this improvement season for me has been different to the last because, well, firstly, I'm not on a meal plan. So that's the biggest change. Last time I was just meal plan. I'd even weigh out my sodium. Like, again, going back to the whole like extra 1%, consistency, like everything has to be perfect. Like, I'll do that in my prep, but in my off season, like, it's not that difficult. Eat, train, sleep, and grow some tissue. Like, enjoy your life. And then, you know, when you need to dial it in and you need to be like more on the nose with things, because for me, again, like that's when my competitive nature will come out. It'll be like, oh, like it's prep, it's crunch time. And for me, I find that like having more control of the small variables as well, like that means that I'm more consistent. But yeah, in the off season, I've enjoyed just having a bit more flexibility, to be honest. As long as you're eating and as long as you're training hard, you're going to be making the improvements.
Exactly. And I would rather gain a little bit extra body fat by having a bit more flexibility than reduce by what, 2-5 pounds, whatever it is, to be less flexible, less engaged, and then feel like I missed out or like I was still in that prep mode. And we do need that relief sometimes. Even now, like I'm doing this gut protocol during my improvement season, and it's like a mental game because I'm like, dang, like this would be my improvement season, and this is more strict than prep. Like, come on now, what's happening? But you're right. You got to relieve that pressure. And you went from a meal plan to what sounds like now macros and tracking that.
Yeah, like to be honest with you, I even loosely track macros. So like I hit my protein, but like if my carbs and fats swap around, they swap around. Like, you know, I'm just not an idiot. Like I try and eat like an adult. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing is like, you know what foods are gonna fuel your training better than others, and like I'll make decisions based on that. But if I want to have something fun, I'll have it because I'm like, now's the time to do that. Like that ain't gonna be there when I'm in prep, especially, you know, like I've said, having such big goals in the sport. And I think ultimately for me, like this improvement season as well, like I want this to be the improvement season that takes me from a third call out into a first call out on a US pro stage. So again, I'm respecting the process and I'm giving my body the time that it needs, and like respecting bodybuilding as an art. Do you know what I mean? Like not trying to rush the process or like skim out and pull back, because ultimately, like if you do that, you might not actually capitalize on that muscle growth that you want and need to be competitive.
So true. People try too hard to stay looking like the version of themselves on stage that they end up inhibiting the version of themselves that they are meant to become on stage. And like you said, this body in our improvement season is building the body that's going to be showcased on stage. And sure, fat gain can be scary, but what's scarier is getting on stage looking the same or worse.
I was going to say, yeah, 100%. Like as much as obviously the 2021-2022 like end of season improvement season that made me feel miserable, that process, obviously, like I said, I struggled with the weight gain then, but coming into the prep made me appreciate actually that served a purpose, because my physique went from winning a regional overall, which was amazing, but like second place at a pro qualifier, to winning my pro card. And honestly, the physique was so dramatically different. Like I didn't have a glute ham tie-in at the regional overall. Like my glutes weren't developed enough. My hamstrings weren't developed enough. You know, all those little things where like you can't get that condition needed unless you have the muscle there to pull, to show the lines through when you diet. I think that was something that, again, it was a lesson that I learned of like, now I understand why I need more tissue, and that's why I'm not getting as lean as I could be. The two go hand in hand. So to get one, you have to have the other.
Exactly. And you use the word respect. And I always love that, because you do have to respect the process. Just like if you're going to stand on stage and you're going to be compared to other girls, or you're going to scroll on social media and you're going to compare yourself, you also have to respect everything that they've gone through to get there. Just like you have to respect what you've gone through to get to where you are. Now, you did say that in this improvement season, like because of the last one, you know, you were really focused, you saw it pay off. Now in this one, you want to jump from third call outs in the US Pro Show to first. So what have you been doing? And how do you know when, how could someone know when they've put on the tissue needed to make that kind of change?
It's a difficult one, really, because it's blind faith. But in my head, I'm like, well, 1 + 1 = 2. So if I'm eating this much food and I'm training and I'm absolutely gassed out at the end of my sessions, I'm like, surely, surely something is going to be building underneath. But something that I actually like to do is I like to compare photos over the years. So photos that I've done, check-in photos, whether that's to my current coach, or even if I'm having a day where I'm like, oh, like, not sure. I love to, and you might be the same, I love to compare like my photos now to my photos in 2015, because I'm like, the evolution is mind-blowing when you put the photos side by side. And day to day, month to month, you might not see a lot, especially in an improvement phase, because the lines aren't there, the body fat is covering the tissue. But I actually do see a big change, to be fair, in this off season. And again, I think a lot of it is down to how high my food is right now. It's the highest it's ever been for me in an off season. But again, the more muscle you've got, the more food you can eat. So I'm like, like I'm making connections. I'm like, yeah, surely the glutes have grown.
Yeah, I love that. And you can feel it too, right? Like, you ever like touch your shoulder? It feels
Yeah,
different. Or you touch your glutes. Like, I can remember past me, like I touched my body, it felt softer.
yeah,
Like
totally.
those are little things that you can look for. And then, like you said, you just know if you're eating more and you're not
Yeah,
gaining an exorbitant amount of fat week after week, your body's actually using it for the muscle tissue.
totally. I think again, it's one of those where you won't know 100% until you've fully stripped back. But I guess that's part of the excitement of bodybuilding, is like when you start that prep, I had no idea how I was going to look this year, but I was honestly blown away. I was like, wow, I didn't ever think that I could look like this. And my goal, yes, my goal was to turn pro, but my goal was to have a pro worthy physique. And again, now I'm like, I want an Olympia worthy physique. And when you ask about, what have I been doing? Again, a big part of that is the training. And that was something that I don't think, again, back in the day, was sort of shared enough for bikini competitors specifically, because obviously I think the way in which we train is going to be different, especially the more advanced that you get, because you start sculpting your physique rather than just packing on tissue everywhere. But yeah, for me, it's definitely been amazing to like refine my training as a skill over the years and learn how to train properly, like, as an athlete.
What does that look like for you? Like when you go in the gym, what is Marnie doing?
So I use a logbook when I train. I like to log my training. So, and I know not everybody enjoys that. When I'm in a prep, towards the back end of a prep, I'll kind of stop using that, because you won't typically see the numbers go up anymore, and it becomes more about like feeling the muscle contract rather than like, oh, have we progressed XYZ. But when I'm in an off season, I like to use my logbook, because it's a way for me to measure that progress as well, apart from just looking at visual pictures. So yeah, I train heavy, I train hard, I train to failure. So
Every
yeah,
set?
every set. I usually do about 2 working sets at the moment on every exercise. I train glutes 3 times a week, and I do upper body twice a week. And we've specifically added in a bit more lat training, because I find that for myself in my front pose, I lack a bit of the density there that's needed to like make my waist look smaller. So again, I think like when you've mentioned waist trainers and stuff before, like I don't use a waist trainer. Maybe I will in the future. I'll try it and see what I think. But for me, it's more so about like building more tissue to create that illusion. And obviously then that's where the posing comes in as well, and being able to hit your poses correctly. But yeah, training wise, a lot of shoulders. I do a bit of maintenance work on my arms. I know that I've seen Sandy say quite a few times, like, you need some development there as well. So again, I think that's important. Like if you're just starting out, don't go in the gym and just train glutes and shoulders, because you will expose the fact that you've got no lats, you've got no hamstrings, you've got no calves, you've got no biceps. Like the judges will be able to spot that on a physique with a trained eye. Whereas obviously, like I said, the more advanced that you get, it might just be like one set here, one set there a week, where like you're just maintaining what you've got. So yeah, the training's intense, but I love it. Like, yeah, that's probably my favorite part, to be honest, in an off season, is just, like I say, shifting the focus to that.
Yeah, like pushing the heavy weight in the gym and just focusing on building and taking sets to failure, and also eating more so you feel even more energized and fueled. And then adding on top of that, like you just know that you're changing your body. Now, granted, like you said, it's a blind faith, because someone else I interviewed, they said like it's like you're giving, I don't remember who it was, and forgive me to whoever's listening and said that, but it's like you're unwrapping a birthday gift, or you're unwrapping a gift to yourself. I want to say it was Megan Long, the first Megan Long I interviewed. I want to say it was her. But it's like you're unwrapping a gift to yourself. And I was like, I like that, because it's true. Like we're creating something better every year, and then we get to open it on stage and show that and enjoy it. And like, you personally want to achieve something big. You want to achieve the biggest goal that every IFBB bikini competitor who seeks to compete at that level sets. Any IFBB competitor, period, is to get on the Olympia stage. And you put yourself on stage next to some of the best athletes in the game right now. Last year you did this. So, and that was at some of the most prestigious shows. Like, it's no joke. New York Pro.
Olympia. Mini Olympia, pretty much.
Exactly. And it was a highly talked about show. There were a lot of, I mean, it was just a phenomenal production, because you're seeing, like, literally, like you said, a preview of the Olympia. So what did putting yourself in that position teach you about what you need to change and improve on?
Well, firstly, going to Pittsburgh, I wouldn't even count the One Bro Pro as my pro debut, because I'm like, I'd basically already done a show, and then I just threw myself on stage because I'm like, why not? Let's do it. Yeah. I remember Ian, the promoter of Two Bros backstage, was like staring at me backstage, because I was just stood there like at the bottom of the stairs, like in awe. I was like, I'm about to do the pro show. And he was like, you just can't believe that you're here, can you? I was like, no. He said, well, go out there and enjoy it, and you never know, you might get top 5. And then obviously, like you said, I came 4th, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty good going. So yeah, like, I definitely manifested being able to do the bigger shows. Pittsburgh and New York, obviously, like, they're probably the biggest shows under like the Arnold and the Olympia, right? Yeah. But you know what? I was like, you've got nothing to lose here and everything to gain. And honestly, I can't tell you how nervous I was, but those feelings reminded me, like, this right now is a prime example of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Like, you know, that feeling where you get like the butterflies, the adrenaline. I had it before you joined this call. I was like, oh, there it is. That's awesome. But yeah, like, I felt like a first timer again, man, in Pittsburgh. I really did. And to be fair, like, none of these girls know who I am. I know who all of them are. And I was the first one out on stage because it's in alphabetical order.
You're like, hello. Let me get to the front really quickly.
It was just unbelievable, the experience. But I think, you know, what it taught me was, again, like, just shoot for the moon, like, absolutely shoot for the moon. Because in Pittsburgh, I came 14th, so I didn't come 16th, which is obviously like everyone comes 16th. So I'm like, you know, I've got a placement there. Yeah, I've got a placement there, and I'm like, you know, you don't know until you get there and you find out. Do you know what I mean? So, like I say, I had nothing to lose. I wanted to get myself in front of the best judges in the game. That was my goal. Get in front of the judges, stand next to the best athletes, and see where the gaps are. Now, for me, it was definitely glute density, like I say, and probably lats, delt, everything, let's be honest. But I, you know, like, physique wise, but also posing wise. And it reminded me, like, when I feel nervous, like, my posing isn't me. And you can see it on the videos and stuff, like, competing in the UK, like, you know, all my clients are in the audience, my coach is there, my friends are there, like, the judges know me. In the US, no one knows who I am. So again, like I knew that I would grow as a person by pushing myself to go and do that show. And it was absolutely amazing. Like everybody in the crowd as well, like the media coverage, like, oh, it's just insane. Total dream
A
come true.
different beast. Yeah, it's totally different. And what's cool, I want to highlight this story so you can talk more about how you use this in your life, but you had actually taken a flyer for the New York Pro. Tell that story.
So basically in 2022, when I was in that off season, I went out, I did a big trip to the US where I actually went to Disney World as well. I did 3 in 1. So I did the Arnold Expo as a spectator in Ohio, my first time ever being at that show. And obviously it's one of those, it's like a bucket list. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go. Like, especially after the UK Arnold that we had, because it was honestly amazing. Like the production was so cool. So we went out to the US Arnold. But to fly to, you actually can't fly to Columbus, Ohio from the UK. I don't think it's an international airport. So we had to stop in New York on the way. So like, right, let's go to New York. Let's do the whole thing. Like, let's go to New York. And then I'm like, we need to go to Bev's gym. Like, it's iconic. And obviously, again, me loving to train in off season, I'm like, yes, let's go get a training session in. And when we walked inside the gym, on the counter, they had these little flyers for like the New York Pro in 2022. And I took a flyer and I put it in the front of my big Built for Athletes backpack. And when I got home, I slid it under the glass on my desk as a reminder of like, one day I'd love to compete at this show. Like, this is my goal. This, like, you know, again, like one of those things, I want to achieve it. And then, yeah, like, obviously, when I won my pro card this year, I was like, oh, Pittsburgh and New York are in 4 weeks. Let's do it, YOLO. So I went back, obviously, to New York and I went to Bev's gym, and there they were, the same flyers, but the 2023 version. And I just saw them and I was like, this is just insane. Like, I do believe, I don't know, do you believe in manifestation? Are you big on that?
Yeah, so I wrote a book when I was 19, and in the title it says manifest your way to your best, most badass self. I do definitely believe in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, like I brought the flyer home from 2023. It's in, if anyone knows me on Instagram, if you go through my New York Pro highlights, you'll see it at the end of the highlights because I slide the 2023 flyer under my desk. And it's just,
Oh.
I looked at that flyer every single day from when I came back from that trip in 2022. Like, you know, I'm doing all my posing clients and stuff, and it's there, it's in my peripheral, and I see it, and I'm like, yeah, we're working for something. Like, despite all the obstacles, I'm like, it was like this innate goal that I had of like, there's got to be something more. Like, you've not dedicated your whole adult life to this sport to give up now. Like, you know, there's got to be something more. You can do this. Like, it's that determination, it's that resilience. So yeah, that was again just an amazing moment, and I've had so many of them this year. It's insane. Yeah.
When you won your pro card, you had an emotional moment, right? Like you dropped down in complete elation. And I imagine in that moment, it was a pivotal part of your journey, right? You finally achieved, like you said, you've been working so hard. Why stop now? And that doesn't even just apply that now you're a pro, even leading into that. What were some of the things going through your head in that moment that made it so rewarding?
The first thing that I thought of was like, it was all worth it. Like, you've done it. It was all worth it. Like, you thought, like, in the back of your mind this whole time, like, you know, just keep going, like ups and downs, like I say, but the ups and the downs were worth it, even though they were painful. They were really, really painful. But like, it's that whole thing, I suppose, of like, success is never linear. Like, it just isn't, in any industry, in anything that you want to achieve that's like worthwhile achieving. But yeah, honestly, that I do get really emotional. Like, I do tear up sometimes when I think about it still. Like, I think as well, because a lot of the people in the audience have seen my whole journey. Like, just through the years, like even some of the judges on the judge that actually awarded me my pro card, I'd never been judged by him before. So like it was kind of like a first impression, whereas like, you know, you might go back to shows now and you might get back in front of the same judge and they see you, you know, year on year on year, and they see that progression. But like for me, on the day that I turned pro, I was the calmest I've ever been in my whole journey. I say this a lot. I'm like, a meteor shower could have hit that day and I would have just been like, yeah, it is what it is. Like, I was just so relaxed. My coach was running around the venue like, where's Marnie? Where's Marnie? Like texting me on his phone. And I was like sat in the makeup chair, just like half asleep. I was like, it's fine. Like, I'm gonna be on time. It's okay. Like, he was stressed more than I was. I was so relaxed. But yeah, like I think because I was so relaxed, that like when I was up on the stage, that bikini overall, there's a video on my YouTube channel of it. I think we were in the overall for 7 minutes. Now, if you think about how long that is to judge, it was like walk to the back, walk to the front, walk to the back, walk to the front, over and over and over and over again. Like it was a really, really close battle. And like when I was up there, I was thinking to myself, like, you're fighting for a pro card here. Like, pose like you've never posed before, because like this could be it. And I wasn't in the dead center through that overall. Obviously, being in class A, I originally came out and I was on the end. And he put me in the middle, but it wasn't dead center. It was like there was someone in the middle and then I was to the right of her. So I was like, ooh, like I could be in the mix. He's moved me in. That's a good sign. But like, you don't really know when you're up there because there's that many of you in a line. You kind of just like, eh. Walk to the back, walk to the front, walk to the back, walk to the front. And then he called my number and he was like, 42, switch. And the whole crowd just went like this, clients were there. It honestly, and then I actually started laughing because the judges were laughing, and then they were like, "Oh, I take it you've got some fans in the audience." I was like, "It's my fault." So yeah, like that whole overall, I was just like focused out. You know, my coach is shouting like, "Lift up," like glutes, like shouting all the cues at me and stuff like that. And then yeah, when they took us to the side, obviously the judges had made their decision. I remember when you asked me like what was going through my head at that point, it was Billy Garnon who was doing the MC, and he was just talking and it was just almost like a blur what he was saying. But then I realized, I was like, the words that come out of his mouth right now could be the words that you've been waiting to hear this whole time. And I was like, I don't know if it's me, but I was in the middle and I'm like, come on. And then when he said it, like, obviously, yeah, I just burst into tears. I just was like, this is it. Like, this is the moment that so many people dream about. And it was, people ask me like, you know, was it as amazing? And I'm like, yeah, it was, because of the journey that I had up to that point. I think it's an amazing achievement when you see people win a pro card first try, like 1 year off the bat, they've just started training, first ever show. And that's incredible. Like, wow, kudos to those girls that do that. You must be so gifted. But for me, that journey was so meaningful and so emotional, like I say, to have that because of the, like I say, because of the person that you had to become. So
I love that. I'm just thinking about how empowering and beautiful that moment was and is even to this day, and something that will stick with you forever. And you said it was all worth it. And when I hear people say it was worth it, I know that means there was a lot of challenge, because that means that there were times where you thought maybe it's not worth it, or this is very difficult, or will it ever pay off? And then it happened. And then, you know, we started this podcast, we were talking about how a lot of opportunities have come, things have changed. So just this past weekend, you're sharing the sofa with friggin' Ryan Terry and Phil Heath. And I'm like, that right there is awesome. And you also conducted a stage or posing class for Gymshark at one point, their first ever. Like, that is huge. So what are some of the opportunities that have come after this achievement And then let's take that a step further. What do you think it is about you that has afforded you or left you open or prepared to receive those opportunities?
Honestly, my leg was shaking when I was sat on that sofa, by the way.
They're like, why is the stage moving? You're like, I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh yeah, honestly. Well, it's funny because I've actually known Ryan for a long time. We were both with a supplement brand years ago when I was an amateur competitor, and we did a few sampling events together, like the supplements or whatever, going around the gyms. So we've always kind of known of each other, and I look up to a lot of competitors, like not just bikini girls. I think across all the divisions, like we all have those same qualities within us. It's just expressed in a different way, maybe depending on what category you compete in. But yeah, like I really look up to Ryan because if you've ever looked at Ryan's competitive history, it is mind blowing. He's been at the Olympia for 10 years in a row, I believe, which is insane. And obviously won the Arnold Classic and stuff like that. But I bumped into Ryan at the New York Pro, funnily enough. And we just had like a passing conversation. And then, you know, I guess it's that, like you said, like what makes me receptive to things. I don't know, like, I guess just because I connect with people, maybe. He obviously put my name forward for the opportunities that I've had with Gymshark. And then once that connection was made, I think honestly, they were really surprised at like the intricacies of bikini, because when I taught the posing seminar, obviously in the run up to the British Championships, the Gymshark team like stuck their head through the door, and I think they were like, wow, we had no idea like how much goes into this. Like it's not just twist this way, sit that way, put this foot here. Like I was telling them, like hair placement's important, this is how we sign off from stage, like these are things that you need to know about the sport or whatever. Like, again, you'll know this because you're passionate about bikini. Like, there's so many things that we have to think about. But yeah, then obviously I was at the event as well, and I had some girls competing in the show, and then they asked me to do the Q&A panel with Phil, and I thought they were joking. I was like, I'll believe it when I'm sat on the couch next to him. And then there I was, and it was just, like I say, another pinch me moment, because I don't think that would have been possible if I hadn't won my pro card this year. And like, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I believe I was always worthy because I know my stuff. And just like you know your stuff, do you know what I mean? Like, it's having the IFBB Pro status, it's so, what's the word, prestigious. And a lot of people look up to us, but I was that person inside before I won the pro card. And I think that's why the opportunities have come my way. And I guess in part it is a little bit sad because it's like, oh, did you not think I was worthy before I won the pro card? But I think the reality is like that almost just gives you that credential, could you say?
Right.
And I think, I know that through my Instagram and stuff, like I've inspired a lot of people when I was an amateur, like you get that as well. Like you inspire me, like a lot of the stuff you put out. But yeah, I think again, that's part of it, is like winning the pro card and stuff, and being able to like already be the pro in terms of how you conduct yourself and what you stand for and your beliefs and just all those things, to like step into that role and step into those shoes when the opportunity comes knocking. I just say yes to every opportunity that comes my way now, and then I figure out how to do it later. So
I love that. That's such a great point too. You gotta be willing to say yes. Maybe you're asking for one thing in your life, or you're trying to manifest something, and you're too specific that you miss the opportunities when they come to set you up for that. And it's important to say yes, to develop ourselves into saying yes and being willing to do that. And I also appreciate that you said you're inspired by me. Thank you. That's so sweet. And I do agree that like, regardless of a title, there has to be purpose in this journey outside of titles. Whether or not you're running a business and competing is not the point, because I know a lot of listeners aren't doing that, but there has to be purpose beyond the title. And then when you do receive the title, you can have even more meaning and purpose to it, or it already carries so much meaning and purpose. And being up there on that couch, doing a panel. Also, let's not forget the fact that Ryan was believing in you before you were a pro. He was putting your name in rooms that mattered. And so were other people, just like you do for others. So that's something that stood out to me in that story, is like, sometimes it does feel like, they like me now, they like me now, but really like they loved you before, and now more people love and like you now. And I was actually hoping you could share maybe one of the lasting memories or something that stood out to you from that experience this past weekend, and maybe something that was a takeaway you would be willing to give us.
Yeah, so when I came off stage from the Q&A, Phil's just like me. I think he's a talker. Like, Ryan asked him a question and he talks and talks and talks, and it's amazing to hear about his mentality as obviously 7 times Mr. Olympia, because like what he's achieved is just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually talking a lot about how he looks up to Arnold, and when he met Arnold for the first time, it was a really emotional connection that they had. Like, there was a handshake and it was like just a thing. And when we came off stage, like, I actually said to Phil, like, you say like on the stage just how we should give thanks to people that have achieved more than us if they've inspired us. And I'm like, I need to say thank you to you, because like just listening to how you talk, I relate to so much of what he says. And he's very like, you almost get this like lone wolf mentality when you talk to Phil, because he's like, it's just me in the gym. Like, I'm just there with my headphones on. I don't rely on anyone. Like, I don't rely on anyone to do my cardio. I don't have cardio buddies. I don't have training buddies. It's just me. It's just the gym. And that's how it's always been. And I related to that so much, because like growing up for me, when I first came into the sport, I didn't have a lot of friends in the sport. Like, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. Like, I was picked on at school, and like, I think I've always been very different. But he made me realize that it's okay to be different, and it's actually kind of cool. And look at what he's achieved. And like, for me to be sat there on that couch with him, like I say, it made me realize that it is okay to feel alone sometimes on your journey. Like, I've met some incredible people through the last 9 years, and like, connecting with people on the other side of the world like you, but you might have had those moments throughout your journey where like you felt very in your own head or very isolated or whatever. And like, yeah, Phil just made me realize, like, through the conversations, we had a long conversation after we came off stage, but he shared a lot of that wisdom with me. And yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest take home points that I took from that. So yeah.
Love that. Phil is awesome at advocating too in the sport. He will post about mental health, and he'll post about the experiences, and that's something I appreciate. He one time posted on body dysmorphia, so I did like a review video on, I like dissected what he was saying and provided research and insight into ways competitors can actually address and overcome that too. So if you guys are interested, that's also on YouTube. But
I'm definitely gonna go and watch this right now.
Yes, I'll send it to you. Don't worry.
Yeah, please do.
I will. It actually was like really cool because he appreciated it and his wife appreciated it, and they saw it, which made me really feel gratified, because I'm like, my approach was to hopefully spread it and support it, because he does such a great job of advocating and sharing. And like, if 7 times champ goes through this, you're probably going to go through it, like, let's be real. So, and I love hearing that he helped you to see that different is great. They call him the gift for a reason, right? He's got his own unique gifts. So you said though that you were picked on in school, and now I kind of do want to hear more about that. I'm a little bit curious. What were you picked on for growing up?
I think just being different. If you can't tell by my name, I'm actually half Arab, so I have like a Middle Eastern background. And again, I think like when kids are young, different is an excuse to pick on someone, like if you're, I guess, not the same as everyone else. And I think as well, moreover, like growing up beyond that as well, like even now in my adult life, there's going to be people who think what I do or what we do is very strange, like, because bodybuilding is so different. Like, as much as we're in this big world of our own, we can forget and feel disconnected from normal people sometimes.
100%.
There will be people that I grew up with, went to school with, whatever, that probably think she is so strange. She always was strange and she still is. But there's people out there that obviously think otherwise. And, you know, like I say, I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why I was picked on, is because I was different. And like, I used to feel ashamed. I used to feel ashamed of my background. I used to feel ashamed of my heritage. Like, I've experienced racism at school, like so many different things. But ultimately, I feel like maybe what defines me again is like my hard work and the qualities that I have through bodybuilding, and like that's celebrated in bodybuilding. And actually being different and being from a different culture is, I would say, maybe the norm in bodybuilding, because it attracts people from all different ways of life. Obviously with NPC worldwide now as well, like we are all over the world really. So like you were saying, all the listeners that you've got from like every country pretty much.
Literally.
So yeah, I feel like bodybuilding's definitely given me that sense of belonging. When I first started, like I say, I wasn't part of a community, but this is a big reason why I created Rockit Posing and the community that I have. I think if I delve deeper, like I haven't done any therapy, but I'm sure if I went to a therapist, a lot of what I do now is probably like trying to protect my inner child or whatever that people say, because I didn't have that you know, big circle of friends necessarily when I was younger or whatever. So maybe that's why, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about creating that now in my adult life for people that come into the sport.
You represented that even at your university when you went back and you started a whole club. Like,
yeah.
you started a whole bodybuilding club.
Yeah,
That's freaking
man.
awesome. That is awesome. When I heard that, I was like, this is a girl's girl and she cares. And I just think it's super awesome that you found that it was so beneficial to your life and to who you are, that you wanted other people to experience that type of connection and belonging and maybe peace that you got from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like I said, like the confidence to express who you are and what you love. Because I do think bodybuilding is an expression ultimately, like the way we carry ourselves on stage. Like, I don't know, like some people go on stage and they have like a bit of an alter ego almost, but like that's okay. And like I said, it's celebrated. So yeah, it's almost like a judgment-free zone in a sense, but then you get judged when you're on stage instead.
You have said that you need thick skin for this sport. Did you ever have moments where you're like, my skin just got thicker, like that was hard to hear, other than when your coach said what they said?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a big moment. I'd say, yeah, like probably in the earlier days, like, you know, getting on stage and maybe definitely not being lean enough for the category, or like again just not having enough muscle. Yeah, like people are always going to have opinions whether they say it to your face or not. But another thing, actually, you know, when I was talking earlier about having low confidence in 2022, when I came out of that prep in 2021, that's when the spiral kind of started going into 2022. And I actually was in the gym once, and I train out of a huge bodybuilding gym. It's called Ultraflex. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. If any of the UK listeners, they'll obviously know Ultraflex, but it's a bodybuilding gym. Like, we have like a Dorian Yates piece of gym equipment in the gym. Like, it's old school bodybuilding style. So like a lot of the people who train in there, like there's a lot of competitors, like people know about competing. They know that when you come out of prep, you gain body fat. Like, it's just the thing. But I remember like going in the gym, and this was only like what, 2 years ago. I went in the gym and I was post show, and like my face was obviously like not sunken anymore. And then I had someone say like, yeah, I can tell that you post show now because your cheeks are really chubby. And honestly, Celeste, I didn't finish my training session. I got in my car and I sat in the car and just bawled my eyes out in the gym car park. So yeah, like thick skin, like you might get comments like that. And to be honest, I've actually worried that like maybe as a pro, I would be subject to that, how I do my off season, and like you don't want to gain X amount above stage weight and like stuff like that. And that's a very, very common thing that people, you might hear them say it in the industry. But to be honest, I think I feel more empowered now than ever as a pro to actually not be afraid to be different and to share my truth and share what works for me. And I probably felt more pressure as an amateur who was trying to turn pro to be perfect, because it's like, you're not worthy of being a pro if you don't do it this way. But now that I am a pro, I'm like, actually, yeah, you are. Like, you do it your way, she does it her way, and that's fine.
Earning your pro card was like a accolade for doing things your way. That almost gives that extra boost of confidence and proof that, you know what, I can enroll people in this vision, that it can be done this way. Whereas when you haven't yet achieved that, but that's what you're working towards, and now you're taking a different route, it still leaves it up to question in our mind, like, oh, maybe not. But in reality, you knew that's what you needed to do and change, because it wasn't working anyways before. So now it's like you're enrolling people into that and you're confident in that. And that's exciting. That's an exciting place to be, and you're owning who you are and what you can do. And I love that you're saying, you know, mine looks different. Doesn't mean it's wrong, just looks different. And that's actually a good thing. And truly, I think we need more of that in the industry. I think we need more of that. Yeah, you got to have thick skin, but also like you got to be willing to stand up for what your process is. And I had a similar moment back in 2018 or 20, I don't even remember now. And I remember I went to the gym, and then this guy like made a comment about my body that was really, I don't think he meant harm, but it was harmful.
Yeah.
And I went into the spin room because I had cardio to do. And I was like on the bike, just crying. And it was private. The spin room was private, and I kept the lights off, and I was just crying. And I was like, and I remember I sent a photo to my sister, and I was like, this guy just said this. And I was like, but what's crazy to me is like, he has no idea what I struggle with. Like he doesn't actually know what this process is. He doesn't know what's required of me. He doesn't know I'm already hard enough on myself. And then I had a breakthrough. I'm like, I actually have taught all these people how to speak about me, because when they would comment on my lean body and my lean face, I would like eat it up. So I can't expect them to no longer make comments, you know? So I started changing how I spoke and let people speak about my body. Like if they were saying, wow, you're looking really lean, thank you so much for acknowledging my hard work. You know, I've actually been really down in energy. Tomorrow, can you ask me about my energy? Just changing the subject. Because then post show, I noticed people, how are you feeling, was more common than like, wow, it looks like you gained some weight already. Now, granted, they still come. Like you said, you still gotta have thick skin. You're still gonna have that one person who's like, I don't know why you decide to do this sport where you don't ever stay the same. You're either here or there. And it's like, well, yeah, that's it. You just said it yourself. You don't understand the sport. So I can really relate to that.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, what you've said there is really powerful. Like changing the way that you talk about yourself, but also how you would respond, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely carry that forward.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. And honestly, just communication in this sport in general is so important. You even shared that after a show, you like to give yourself a bit more flexibility, be more present, and using that presence to stay in control. You wrote about this in a post, and you were saying how post show you land on a good approach for you, and that is to step back a little bit. So what do you do to support yourself in that transition, and how did you communicate that with your coach and advocate for yourself so that you could get the amount of food you need post show and the amount of flexibility you need that you feel has helped you sustain or be on point?
Yeah, that's a great one. I think honestly, I think the biggest thing that has allowed me to like have I don't want to say a smooth transition, because for me, I'm sure you'll agree. It's probably my least favorite part of bodybuilding is the transition between post-show and your off season. Like that, it's a tricky window. And once you're through it, you're fine. I think once you get your runway, you're all good, whether that's in a prep or in an off season. It's the time in between that can be the most challenging. So yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that allowed me to get through that was communication with my coach, 100%. And again, it just goes to show that I was so right to make the decision to like join with him instead, because I was able to go to him with my emotional struggles, mental struggles at the beginning. So that meant that relationship started off on that note. So from there on in, it didn't matter what I said to Jake, because I was like, I know that you're not going to judge me. Like, you've seen me at my lowest already. And I didn't feel scared to communicate like what I needed from him as well. So like that prep that I did, I actually started the prep in September 2022, and I was going to do the US Arnold Amateur in the March. Now, there was a bit of a hoo-ha with that. The show got cancelled and then put back on in 2 weeks. And I was like, it's a sign from the universe not to do the show. So we moved it and chose the Ben Weider instead. But what that meant was that, again, it's weird, isn't it, how the universe does these things?
That's interesting.
Because imagine if I'd gone and done that and like maybe I didn't win or whatever, but it meant that I didn't peak for the Ben Weider and then I might not have won the pro card. Like, it's just crazy.
Right.
But I digress. That meant that my prep was extended because obviously the show day was pushed out. And then it was further extended because I did Pittsburgh and New York, which I was like, oh, well, we're here now, we may as well do it. So it adds another 4 weeks. And then before you know it, you've been in prep for 9 months. 9 months I was dieting, which is such a, I mean, there's only 12 months in a year. So because I'd been in prep for so long, I was 100% at burnout by the time I got to New York, because they were only a week apart. So it was back-to-back peak weeks. I came in the third call out in Pittsburgh and I was like, well, Steve Weinberger actually took one look at me at Bev's gym and he was like, yeah, you need about 2 to 3 pounds worth of tissue all over. I was like, right, sound, let's just go into off season now. So at that point, mentally, I'm like tapped out of the process at that point. I'm like, prep's done. I need to grow, like whatever. So I was really burnt out. So as you can imagine, the last thing that I wanted to do was a slow reverse out of that prep. I was like, put my food up, like, don't just trickle in 10 grams of carbs here and there, like feed me up.
Like, you were like, let's do recovery diet, not slow reverse.
And Jake is really, really good with his reverse protocols. Like, he's known in the UK for, controlling people's reverse diets. He's really on it with that. But I was the anomaly. I was like, look, you need to put my food up faster, because the thing is like, if your targets are too low, he was allowing me to macro track. I wanted to macro track it because he does meal plans and stuff, but he was like, yeah, we can do macros. That's fine. But the targets were so low that I wasn't able to stick to them because my body was just like, we're done. We can't do this anymore. Mentally, I'm like, yeah, it's done. And when the targets are too low, that's when you can almost fall into that cycle of feeling like a failure because you're not able to stick to that. So I was like, well, logic says increase your targets, because then if you can stick to that, you feel like you're succeeding at this. So that's ultimately what we did. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if my communication wasn't there with him. There's no way. And he was just like, I just don't want you to end up in a position that you ended up in last time where you were desperately unhappy. But that hasn't happened. And like I said, I feel like if more than anything, I'm owning where I'm at right now, even though I'm like, I don't know, 12 kilos above stage weight or whatever. But it's because I was true to my process every time I made a decision or an action was taken. So yeah.
That's really important point too, is that you feel better about where you're at because you're proactively choosing it. You're actually making the choice that's leading to this result, versus in the past, if you're falling into that failure mentality, maybe that leads to all or nothing behaviors. It's harder to be proud of yourself or happy and not feel miserable when you feel out of control. So when you took it into your own hands and you're like, realistically, I know this is what I need, then you were able to get what you needed. And 9 months of dieting, what people often forget is like when you're reversing, you're still dieting.
Yeah.
You're still in a deficit.
Yeah.
Like, so if you need to go into recovery mode, it would be, I honestly think, and I share this with clients who I see are in extended deficits, or they're trying to mitigate post-show fat gain by restricting themselves, even when their coach is trying to bring up their food. What I try to encourage them to understand is, from a numbers perspective, it is better to have a daily amount to hit that is higher than a daily amount that is so low that you cannot hit it, that you overeat every single day, feeling like crap about yourself, spiraling into now I got to restrict and do extra, and then never having a macro increase because you have yet to stick to these ones. And then you lose all your data. It's not a healthy place to be. It's so much better. Increase it 500 calories. That would be better because you're already binging on 500 calories every day. So we have to look at it from a logical, yes, emotionally it's tough and we recognize there's burnout, but also logically, if you're binging on, some people are binging on, and I'm going to be honest, some people tell me they're binging on 12,000 calories in a day over a very short period of time. And it's like, let's, and why? They're hungry. They're still struggling. They feel like a failure. They went off plan a little bit the day before. So I love that you shared that piece of your story too, the fact that you had to ask for more and it was okay, and that you started your coaching relationship with safety and vulnerability. If we go to coaches only presenting this perfect image of an athlete to them, and we don't prepare them for the fact that we're humans, the coach may not know how to like navigate that. Your coach believed in you also, even in a low point. And you said that your boyfriend was a contributing factor to that too. He saw this is not the right path anymore. You should consider your friend who does this and does a great job and is producing great results. So having someone else plant that seed too and let you know it's safe to also show the difficulty is awesome.
The relationship that I have with Jake is very unique in the sense of like, I think because I've been in the industry for a while and I've had so many different coaching experiences and, you know, I've had great seasons and whatever, I think he almost trusts my judgment too. So like we back and forth a lot, like whether it's about an off season, whether it's about a prep, like here's another thing that some people might think, whoa, that's crazy. Like if I am in a prep and I feel like I might need a refeed, I will tell Jake. I'll be like, I think I might need a refeed. Now, to some athletes, like, yes, I also have that athlete mode within me that wants to do as much as possible. You always have to be doing something. Like we all have that within us to a degree. But I also understand the importance of the other side of communication and being able to tell Jake. He knows that if I tell him that I am absolutely off the gym, like I need that break, he's like, yeah, I know when you need a rest, because he, again, like I say, he trusts that judgment. We've got that relationship. Like I'm not going to be the one that dosses out of training for fun of it. Like I don't want to leave progress on the table. So when I'm saying something, it's coming from a place of like, this is constructive, you need to know X, Y, Z, and it's going to help us move forward as a team. You see what I mean?
You have to know yourself
Yeah.
enough to exhibit consistent character traits that your coach can understand too. So when you act out of alignment with those consistent character traits, they recognize that this is different. This isn't, oh, Marnie again skipping the gym. No, Marnie never skips the gym. Marnie isn't asking for a rest day because she's lazy. Marnie's not lazy. She'll be in the gym tomorrow. If I told her to do it 3 times, she's going to do it.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to know. I think really success of an athlete, like knowing yourself, knowing your body, being able to communicate that knowledge too is so key. Because otherwise, if you just put on this fake facade of like, this is the type of person I am, the type of athlete I have to be, and you miss the variables that your coach can actually use to support you, it's like doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, I actually I asked Maureen a question on her question box a few weeks ago, and I just said like, have you got any advice for like new pros? And she just said, firstly, don't be afraid to take your time with this. Take the time and respect the process, like we said, which I think is really important. But I'm sure she answered it, or maybe she answered another question where she said, once you find a coach that cares about you, stick with them. Don't get swept up in thinking that you have to be with XYZ necessarily. And I'll be honest, like that's something that I once thought was important. Maybe we've all had that when we've gone through the sport and we're like, oh, we need to be with this coach because of this or this coach because of that. But I think like once you find that connection and that relationship, like I don't think that I could be this open with another coach the way I am with Jake. So I'm like, I don't think that process would work or it would move me further forward as an athlete. And that's one of the reasons why I was so miserable in 2021, 2022, because it wasn't the right fit. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, you'll meet people throughout your life that you won't be best friends with all of them. You don't have to be. That's just life. I think it's the same in coaching.
I agree. And something I want to talk about is your work as a posing coach, because that was a big thing that brought you guys connected too. And also you're known for it and it's something you've been encouraged for. So people see your confidence on stage, and you coach UK and US athletes, right?
Yeah, primarily it is UK girls. I have a couple of European as well. But UK and Ireland, actually, I have a lot of Irish clients. Yeah.
Awesome.
Of the accent.
I love that. Well, okay, so something that's worth noting is you see European competitors come to America and exhibit.
Oh, don't. I know.
No, I know. That's just why I'm bringing it up, though, because I think this is a good opportunity to share how you address that as a coach, because being that you're in the UK, they might look at you and be like, she's posing different than everyone else around here. Well, you're posing like an American level competitor. And I say that American level as in like people who are coming to America to compete, not in a way of like, you have to be American, just people who are coming to America to compete. So how do you approach that as a posing coach when people are like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, there's definitely big differences, isn't there? And I'll be honest as well, when you were asking me before, like what I learned from going to Pittsburgh and New York, like that's another big reason why I went there, to be honest, is so that like I can learn and further my knowledge and then pass it on to my clients or whatever, because I personally don't feel like enough European competitors compete in the US. Like we're starting to see more of it, but there's a bit of a delay. And I think a lot of this goes back to like, back in the day where we had the IFBB Pro League split from the IFBB Elite. And I think the problem is that like a lot of the European competitors are actually now coming into the IFBB Pro League with that different posing background, and they're still translating it on the IFBB Pro League stage or on the NPC stage. Now, it's not that the judges are awarding that necessarily. It's that they have to award someone
right
out of that pool of athletes. So if all of those athletes are exhibiting that, then by default, the person who wins the show is posing in that way. And we don't typically see it on the Olympia stage or whatever. But I always try and like, this is something that I'm really passionate about. Again, I think it's because I've grown up through the sport and I've seen the division evolve and I've studied it religiously, like going to watch the Arnold in the US. And I've actually been to watch the Olympia as well. And I think, listening to podcasts like yours and watching the resources on YouTube and stuff like that, I'm trying to like hammer this to my clients all the time of, look at the Olympia, look at how they pose, because that is your benchmark. That is what we're looking for. And when I went to Pittsburgh, I wouldn't say that I look like I pose like a European athlete, but even my posing was like too much for the US Pro stage. That's something that I've learned, and that like I'm looking forward to choreographing a new routine for when I compete next year. And really it taught me the importance of slowing it down. But again, I think one, nerves got the better of me. But two, it's the difference between competing as an amateur and a pro anyway. Because when you're an amateur, it's like like quick, get on stage, get off before they cut you off because you've got a time limit.
Uh,
Whereas obviously when you're a pro, like you can take that time. Like Angelica said to me, like you're a pro now, like you've earned that right to have that time on stage and present in a professional way. So yeah, like that's something that's really important to me. And again, just making sure that like myself and my posing clients, I hold everyone to that standard. And that's why we've won so many overalls and so many pro cards and stuff. And it's like the reason for that, I say, is because of that standard that I have, and like the lessons and teachings that I obviously pass on to them through my own experience, and what works and what doesn't, and what will be rewarded and what's almost like too distracting for the judges.
Totally. Like you see it in America too. Certain times, like there's like that, it's distracting or it's different and different in a way that is almost reminiscent of the past and things that we've gotten away from.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it looks really good on someone where you're like, I could see that. Like, that's cool. And I think part of that's like the it factor. And I was hoping you could talk to us about what you think, because some people, you've stated, not everyone's meant to become an IFBB pro. So what do you think is the it factor that will capture attention, even if the physique isn't like you experienced at your overall, even if the physique isn't exactly where you think it is or needs to be, but there's like an it factor. What is that? And how does someone embody that or create that for themselves?
It's really hard to pinpoint it, isn't it? I do think that you can learn it factor, I think. I could take someone who is just so sheepish and looks at the floor to walking out there like they've won the show, but it takes time, and you have to embody that as much as you embody your cardio, your training. Like it's a whole like alter ego, like persona on the stage. Like I'm quite extroverted, obviously, like you can't shut me up. So I think like that's just natural for me almost. But when I first started, like I couldn't pose without looking at the floor because I was like trying to check where my feet need to go and like, don't want to put a foot wrong. But I think all of that just comes down to practice as well. And in order to be able to like look at the judges and present in that way, you have to be confident with the technique itself. If you're not confident with that, it's going to be written all over your face ultimately. I think there's that. I think the actual pose in itself, but the hair, the makeup, like the right suit, the color that you wear, the tan, it's that pristine, polished look that just makes you go, wow, isn't it? Like,
so true. Like, even taking it out of context, if you walk into a room and then everyone's sitting in that room and then suddenly like the door opens and everyone turns because some like bombshell's walking, but it's not anything about like, they might, like, we could pretend they don't, you can't even see their face yet, it's just smoke and whatever, like it's fog, but some energy is there. It also reminds me of like when Jen Dory came out on stage at the Olympics. There's the fog machines and all that. I'm like, damn, that must be really, yeah, I'm like, that's gotta be hard to walk in. Let's give her a break. I mean, I don't know. It was really, really sick. But I'm like, that is it. Like, that's the it factor. Maureen, she stepped on stage. You can't take your eyes off her. There's something in her eyes. There's something in her energy. And I think you really drove home such a good point, which is like the confidence in what you're doing, the confidence in the technique. They are not watching their hand move. They're not watching their foot go into a different position. They're not looking at the girl next to them to make sure they're lined up. Like it's that, it's the execution, isn't it? I think that does have a lot to do with it.
When I do a posing class or a check-in with one of my clients, if they walk out and they are looking at the floor or they're looking here or there, I'm like, do it again. That's the first thing I'll look for is eye contact. Honestly, it like, I think as well, like just in psychological terms, like us having a conversation, like it's that eye contact. It's like if someone's looking at the floor and shuffling around, it's like you don't get the same connection or energy from someone, and it is the same on stage. And one thing that actually came up at the seminar that we did, well, the Q&A panel with the Gymshark show, I started talking about posing, and then Ryan was like, oh, she's a posing coach, here we go. But I was saying, like, you know, the confidence, the energy, and Phil actually chimed in and he said, like, remember, whether you're an amateur or a pro, people in the audience have paid for a ticket to watch a performance. So put on a performance, put on a performance for the crowd and put on a performance for the panel. And I think forget about the fact that it's a competition. And I say a lot of this to my girls, like, when you are about to walk out onto the stage, clock the panel, look at who the head judge is, and just imagine that they are there to watch your posing routine. You're there to present a routine to them and get some feedback. That also will potentially take some of the nerves away. If you practice in front of, I don't know, a partner, a friend at the gym, or like, you know, a posing coach or whatever in person, I always like imagine that the head judge is sitting right there in front of me, because then when you get on stage, you almost like, in my head, when I competed at the Ben Weider, I was like, I've done this a million times in my own head, that Maz Ali is sat in front of me and there he is. And it's like, right, let's go. We've done this before. So it feels a little bit less, like on the day.
Yes. Love that. Visualizing the judges' faces, visualizing the judging panel definitely brings a level of comfort. If you know who's judging or you're familiar with the judging panels, looking up photos, I think can make a big difference. Now, when you consider bodybuilding as an art and it's a performance, I feel like sometimes that means you got to channel parts of yourself that carry something, you know, soulful, something in them. How can someone channel or use parts of their past or parts of their journey or their story to portray this art that is so captivating?
Wow, that's deep. I'm not really sure how to answer that one. I think as well, one thing for me in particular is I am definitely like a no makeup kind of girl, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the gym, I'm sweaty, I've got my hair in like pigtails or whatever. Like, I don't really like, for me, it's either 0 or 100. Like, nothing or full blown like stage glam, hair done, heels, like all that stuff, right? For me, when I get on stage and when I pose, I suppose it's an opportunity for me to like feel that like feminine energy almost. Do you get what I mean? Because in
Totally.
bodybuilding, I think like we are in our masculine energy when we train potentially. Like, we have to get aggressive, we have to like push ourselves, and you have to like bring the fire, you know?
Yeah.
So I think like for me, being able to pose, it brings out my feminine energy and my feminine side. So I suppose to answer your question, yeah, like that's a form of expression for me, maybe.
I love
Is that
that.
what you were referring to? Yeah.
That's such a great example. Yeah, I totally get that. I remember sometimes just practicing my posing every day would make me feel more confident in who I am and in myself, because I felt that it was a time in the day, even just practicing, where I could be sexy and feel confident, smiling, feeling like I'm important in some regard, and like this journey is important in a different way than before, because I'm prioritizing posing and practicing posing and like showing what I've worked on. And yeah, I totally relate to that. Like, it brings out an energy that you don't often get when you're in the gym pushing
Yeah,
yourself.
because you get to like do the hair flicks
Yeah.
and all like
Exactly. Yeah, and you get to play with it and have fun and like see how it feels to do certain things. So now, when you started Rockit Posing, first of all, Rockit, that's your nickname, isn't it? Like, that's your like,
yeah, like pocket rocket. Yeah.
yes, that's like, what do they like, your sport name?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, the gift and the rocket.
Right, exactly. So is that what inspired Rockit Posing?
Yeah, it is. Like, I toyed with the idea of the name. Like, I was like, Rockit Posing, Rocket. Does it have a name? Does it have a ring to it? And I remember like calling my friends, like, what do you think of Rockit Posing? And they were like, Rockit Posing, Rockit Posing. They were like, I'm not sure. And I was like, I was like trying loads of different names because there's so many like posing coaches and brands out there, and it's like, like elite this or like top that, and I'm like, none of those words really fit what I stand for, because I'm like, I don't want it to be like Marnie Fit posing or something. I'm like, nah, that's like, it's too much about me. It needs to have a loose tie to me, but be about the community and be about my amazing clients. And I'm like, a rocket goes up. And I'm like, that in itself is like, yes, there's a play on words of like pocket rocket, but I'm like, it embodies, it's like explosion. It's like you're going up. It's like, there's so many. I mean, if you've had a look at the team Instagram page, there's a lot of like color on there and like explosion and like fireworks, and it's just very like electric. And whenever I have posing clients that compete in the UK shows, like they're always center stage. They always bring that stage presence and that energy. And it's like, that's what Rockit's all about. It's about putting yourself out there and like having that confidence. And that's where the name came from. But I feel like it has a good ring to it now. The more that I've like, it's become like pretty established, and it's so cool. Like, honestly, it's so cool.
It is awesome. No, it's such a great name. And even just your explanation there is beautiful. And it's a representation of what you hope to achieve with it. Did you ever think that it would turn into what it has, where you're being the world, like literally worldwide brands are having you lead posing seminars and you're speaking on panels and then you're coming on podcasts and you're helping all these athletes to get center stage? Like, did you think that it would turn into this kind of opportunity and business for you?
Absolutely not. I feel like I need to kind of go back to when Rockit started. So I've actually just been putting together a document because I'm going to be recruiting a new posing coach. So I've been kind of typing some bits up about like, about the history of Rockit and like the core values of Rockit and stuff like that. And I say history, but we've only been around since June 2022. So like just a year or so. But I started Rockit when I was at my lowest point, which obviously we've spoke about, in the other questions. And I would be hidden away in the shadows. I took like a hiatus from social media and I threw myself wholeheartedly into my posing clients. I was like living through my posing clients, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm ever going to get back on stage again. And like, honestly, I lived through the girls and I saw their success, and it almost motivated me too, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's insane what we've been able to achieve. But, I think all the results aside, like whether someone wins an overall or wins their class or doesn't, which most of the time the girls do get placings and it's incredible, the feedback that I get from them about how much it's impacted them is just the most rewarding thing of all. I like to host posing events throughout the year. I'm planning the January seminar now, and it's just, even for current clients, they're all desperate to get tickets so they can see each other. Like, they want to be with each other on the team, and like, prospective clients are like, oh, I want to know what Rockit's about. So they'll come to a seminar, and then it's just so amazing what we've done. And it's funny because one of my previous posing clients, she started a bikini podcast, and I was able to like invite her to be a guest. And if I had all the money in the world, Celeste, I would fly you over and have you at a Rockit seminar to be a guest speaker, because I just think the girls would absolutely love to hear what you have to say. And like, yeah, like maybe one day if I could do that, I would.
Hey, I'd even just consider coming out there. And
you so should. Honestly, the girls in the UK would I mean, they already listen to your podcast, but they would love you. Like, for those of the girls that don't know about the podcast, I'm going to share the hell out with it. But
thank
yeah,
you.
that's what I'm saying. Like, we are so aligned in that. Like, for me, it's not just about the posing, because I can tell within 5 minutes if somebody is not confident or they're not enjoying their prep. And a lot of times the girls might have a male coach, So I am like I give like the female touch really, and I help them with their styling and all of that. But I get a lot of girls come on a call with me and they might say like, I'm not enjoying my prep, or like, what do you think about this? Or I'm feeling lost post-show, because a lot of the girls I pose are in their improvement season as well, which I'm a big advocate of posing in the off season. So it's a lot more than just posing really. And I guess it's kind of the same for you. Like it's a lot more than just like coaching. Like you do so many other things as well.
Exactly. Like the message is built more than just a body. I don't even like, people ask if I offer fitness and nutrition. I'm like, no, all I do is mental health, because that's what I care about. And I'm skilled in and educated or whatever, but not or whatever. I am educated in it.
Yes.
But
say it loud.
I'm like, or whatever, like trying to minimize the fact that I invested thousands and thousands of dollars into a higher education and hours of my life. But yeah, I think that, you know, we do have a very aligned mission, and what's important is like, we're supporting athletes in seeing themselves beyond what's maybe presented on stage. It's embracing and owning so much more than that, and getting the most out of your journey, like feeling fulfilled, feeling empowered, feeling excited about what you're doing, because none of the titles, trophies, any of that will matter if you hated the entire process.
Or if you become someone that you don't want to be by the time you get there.
True.
That's the only thing.
Such
if you
good
mold yourself into something that just isn't you, and then you get the title, it's like, oh, now I've got to keep up with this appearance that I've built. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, like you said, you know, you're a no makeup girl, and I can relate to that. Like, I'm like, I never, one, it makes my face itchy. I don't even like it. So I just do it for stage day. And then two, it's just, I don't know how to do it. I mean, I only know how to do stage makeup, funnily enough, but I don't know. I don't want to ruffle feathers when I say this, so I'm going to tread lightly, and hopefully I say this in the kindest way possible. But in this industry, what you see is a lot of outer appearance prioritized, some of which is not natural to the person. And I've felt pressure at times, like I'm supposed to fulfill that mold that other competitors represent, and they always look perfect to some degree.
Yeah, I can relate. I suppose, again, like maybe more now since I have turned pro, because I'm like, you know, you almost, it's that whole thing of like, as a pro, you can't really have a hair out of place. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to be even more pristine. And yeah, like it does worry me at times, but then I'm like, you know, well, you're beautiful the way you are. And, you know, I think again, like there's a reason why we do well at what we do. Like, and same for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, beauty is important in bikini. I do believe that is a thing. But natural beauty is, you know, not everybody has that, I guess, too. Yeah. And maybe that's why they feel the need. I'm not sure.
Yeah, true. Like I think we've almost been conditioned as a society to think beauty is one thing, but it's so many things. It goes so much deeper. And also, like there was a time growing up where this different look was the standard of beauty. It's like, oh, it's the Gwen Stefani, Avril Lavigne. It's the skinny girl look. Yeah. I loved Gwen, so I'm not hating on Gwen, but you know, Pussycat Dolls, like that's the kind of stuff that we were looking at. That was the standard, and then the standards change over time. And what I've come to realize is like the beauty standard and what everybody else is gonna think is ideal is always rotating. So you got to do what you're happy with. And I really like how I love that you said you don't want to get to the end of it and have become someone that you're unhappy with upholding. I've changed for many positive reasons because of this sport, and I've taken care of more parts of my appearance that previously I just didn't care as much about, but in a positive way. And so I'm grateful for that. And so I think that you make a great point. Don't let this turn you into someone that you're not.
I think self-care is important in the sport. And I think a lot of people neglect that. It's especially important as well when you come out of prep. It should be prioritized. Now, it doesn't have to be that you want to look a certain way, but again, like for me, something that I've started doing recently is that will get my nails done.
Well, I
Now,
was about to say our nails are matching.
yeah, I know. We're in
just
sync.
painted mine,
We're in
though.
sync. Yeah, I'm here with the dark burgundy vibes because it's autumn. So
That's exactly. I saw that. I mean, this is more like of a dusty, like a dark dusty rose. It appears they called it. You know what they called it? This actually pissed me off. This nail color is called espresso, and I can't stand. You know, when someone's like, "I would like a shot of espresso," I'm like, "It's espresso," but you know. I was like, why is that?
Oh, that's so funny.
Anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like with the whole, like, you know, fake beauty enhancements or whatever, like, you know, people might think that they need to do that because they don't feel beautiful in themselves. But I think, you know, beauty it runs deeper than just surface level. But again, with the self-care thing, it doesn't have to be something on the outside like this would be. But again, like, it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing because I'm doing it for myself and it makes me feel feminine. And I'm like,
Exactly.
It's something that I can, like, you know, I'm gonna look at my hands and I'm like, oh yeah, like I feel like I'm taking care of myself and I'm not just letting myself go almost. Do you get what I mean?
Totally. Like, I'm a different, like when I curl my eyelashes every morning, you know, that is like I like it. I've done that since freaking middle school, you know, but I just enjoy it. And there's certain things I think men and women, men, when they get their haircut and their beard all done up, it's proven their confidence goes through the roof. You know, if your man's having a rough day, go to the barber, he'll come back a new man, you know, you feel different. But the same thing for women. Like, we have certain things that will always make us look put together. Well, if we brush our hair, it's a different energy for even ourselves. So it's like, you want to be the experiencer of yourself at the highest capacity because I personally have a belief in a higher power, specifically God. You were created by God in such a beautiful way. It would almost be a disservice not to experience yourself fully as how he created you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you should mention that because my family are quite religious. I am not so much, but then I definitely feel like this year that I've had that experience of like, I feel curious about it because of what I've been through this year. I don't know if, like, for you, you've had it since you were young, or if you've been through something in your adult life where you believe now, but it's definitely something that I do believe in, that like that there's a higher power, or like you said, like God or something like that. It's I feel like I believe because I'm like, now I understand why I was made to go through all the things that I was, and like this was waiting at the end, and I'm like, someone's watching over me almost. Do you get what I mean by that?
Totally. I was like raised to be religious, but I never connected to it. And I felt odd. It feels weird. I didn't vibe with it. And then I went through some dark times and my mom brought me to like this adult Bible study. And I was the annoying person asking questions the entire time, questioning everybody's faith and theology in general. And then, you know, but I felt the presence of God a couple times in my life, but I ignored the fact that it was him. I was just like, no, like I knew it was, but I was like, I can't. And then I started believing in the universe. I'm like, it's the universe, source, whatever.
Yeah.
Something felt off.
Okay.
It felt powerful still, and I don't at all discredit people who are there or who do choose that. But like for me, there was always something missing. And then I did go through a very traumatic experience, losing my mom. And I remember in that moment, I wanted to be so mad that it happened. I was like actually upset that how, you know? And then it hit me that he has always been there through the dark times and the good times. And when I reflected on my life, and I thought specifically how many times he actually probably saved my mom, you think about the one time that he's not there. And so then you get upset. But then when I really thought deeper, I'm like, how often was he there? Because she was a big believer. And then I just started to become more open. I was curious at first, like, and then what hit me was it's not about religion at all. It's about relationship. And then I started exploring my relationship with God, and that opened me up. And I had some good friends who supported me in that and who were like willing to talk about it. And they shared like that they had similar concerns, and it was about relationship with God. And then, then I just like started expanding, and it just flowed as it is. I stopped expecting it to look a certain way, you know? So if you're curious, take it down your own path.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. Like, so interesting as well.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We just that's a separate podcast.
Another tangent. Oh, I'm so bad for this.
That was awesome. Well, you know that I like to finish episodes by getting your best advice and then seeing how people can connect with you. So let's get your best advice for somebody who's never competed before but would like to, and then your best advice for someone on their road to pro.
Well, if you've listened this far, well done.
Yeah.
Long one.
I know. I feel like I could talk to you all day.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. Is this like the longest episode you've ever done?
You know what? I want to say no. This has been a very enjoyable episode and definitely one of the longer ones, but I had a long one with a woman named Cheyenne, but I don't remember how long it was.
Well, we're up there.
We're
up there. So, advice for a beginner who's never competed, right?
Yep, but they want to.
Do an improvement season. The second you think that you want to compete, you need to start your posing, and you need to start priming yourself to be in a position in which to start a prep. So that means obviously getting your food in a good position, taking some time to actually build some tissue, some muscle, learn how to train, find a coach that you've got a great relationship with or that you can build a great relationship with. Go to rockitposing.com and sign up for some posing with me. Shameless plug. No, but yeah, in all seriousness, I'd say take your time, but don't overdo it, because I find that people can fall into one of two categories. They either do what I did and get on stage after 4 months without doing any of the groundwork, or they think, oh, I'll do it next year. Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year, because they never think they're ready. So you kind of need to find your middle ground between the two. Like, take your time, but don't take your time and then just put it off. Because when you do your first ever show, obviously you're never going to be Miss Bikini Olympia at your first show. Like, you're always going to just have to get feedback. It's a continual process. So just get yourself up there, get in front of a panel, and then you've started your journey from there. And then advice to someone on the road to turning pro: don't be afraid to stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself and realize that this is a process and that this is a journey. And, ultimately, only the most determined people will go pro and will go far, because it is going to test your determination and perseverance. I know some people who've done, 7 shows in a season, and then on the 7th they get the pro card. So, be prepared to that it might be a longer journey. It might be a shorter one, but it also might be a longer one. And I'm sat here after 8-9 years now, and like I said before, it's been worth it. The whole journey has been worth it. So if it's what you really, really want, stick it out and persevere, and you will get there.
That was beautiful. That is a true testament to your journey too, because you persevered and you've stayed true to yourself in that. Even when it was hard, you found more parts of yourself to explore and embrace and develop. So how can people connect with you? You did mention your website. Go ahead and say it again, along with maybe your Instagram. And I know you're trying to grow that YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, so the shameless plug. So on Instagram and YouTube, I'm just Marnie Fit. So yeah, you can find me on there. I don't know if you put any links in the show notes or anything.
Yes.
Yeah, so there'll be something linked there. And then we also have a team Instagram page for Rockit Posing, but it's not Rocket with an ET, it's with an IT. So it's Rockit, as in rock the stage.
Yes.
So we have a team Instagram page. We have a website, rocketposing.com. And then, yeah, like I said, my YouTube channel, please go subscribe to my channel. There's not many videos on there, but if you want to go see the pro card win video, it's at like 28,000 views now and still climbing. Awesome. It's a good video. It's been professionally filmed as well. So go give it a comment and a like if you want to see some show day stuff.
Love that. Well, yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes page. You guys, it's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, it'll be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, it'll be in the category section. We also post on Instagram. So at celestial_fit, I post updates. So I'm going to share sneak peeks for episodes coming up. We do a highlight reel from this. And of course, we're tagging the athletes when we do that. So if you're trying to follow them there, you can always do that too. And of course, tag us when you listen. Let us know what you think, or let us know that you are listening and tuning in, because that always means a lot to me and the athletes. And message them, message me, reach out, talk to us about it, because it's so rewarding to spend 2 hours with an athlete and then feel like, yeah, it made a difference. You know, it was a really great experience, not just for us, but for you guys. So thank you all for listening. And Marnie, thank you for coming on.
Woo, thanks.
Hope y'all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.